How's it going, boys, girls, and squirrels? Let me open this video up with a fact. Avatar: The Last Airbender has the best magic system in all of media. There, I said it! It has the best magic system, and not because the fights are cool or because its magic system makes the most logical sense, but because bending in the Avatar universe is so personal and so rooted in philosophy that any viewer can find a way that it resonates with them. Anybody who's watched Avatar has asked themselves at one point what type of bender they would be. And what makes Avatar so compelling is that that question isn't answered by a mere preference of element. It's not just a matter of, well, waterbending's cool, so I'd probably be a waterbender. I mean, there's a bit of that, don't get me wrong, waterbending do be cool, but it's also a matter of philosophy. What does it mean to be a firebender? You have characters like Zuko, who thought that fire was a raging, destructive force, until he eventually learned that fire was also rhythmic, gentle, and warm. On the surface, Earth seems like a rigid element, one that encourages structure and stubbornness. But then you have characters like Toph and Boomy who excel because they think outside of the box, breaking societal structures but staying sturdy in their own convictions. Each bending style influences a person's philosophy but doesn't dictate it. This is what makes Avatar such a complex and compelling series, and what makes its world perfect for a role-playing game. Enter Avatar Legends, the role-playing game. Avatar Legends is a new tabletop role-playing game developed by Magpie Games, and it's awesome. Now, full disclosure, Magpie Games did send me this starter box to review, and I am incredibly thankful to them. But I want you guys to know that if this game ended up being terrible, I would 100% tell you. I would totally let you know, and I let them know as well, right? Like, they sent me this game to review, not to advertise. But thankfully, the game is incredible, because that would have been really awkward otherwise. This is your typical tabletop RPG, where players create their own characters, with their own backgrounds, motivations, and ideologies. Then another player, known as the Game Master, or GM, guides them through a campaign that the GM could either come up with on their own, or pick from one of the scenarios provided in the box. If you're the type of person who has always wanted to get into something like Dungeons and Dragons, but has been daunted by the idea of learning all of this lore and taking part in a very improv-heavy type of adventure, well, guess what? Me too. Are you kidding me? Playing a game of Dungeons and Dragons has been my biggest irrational fear since like 5th grade. You have to come up with a character, do a silly voice, and then improv your way through an imaginary adventure. It's like every aspect of these games are designed to embarrass you in front of your closest friends. So you can imagine my mild panic when I found out that I have to GM one of these games. Needless to say, but that is why I'm so excited to talk about this game, because I truly believe that this is the perfect entry point into anybody trying to get into these types of games. Now, the starter box comes with a rule book, a paper map, helpful cards to show players what moves they can make during combat encounters, an adventure booklet featuring 2 scenarios, one from Aang's era and one from Korra's, 10 dice, and 10 pre-built character sheets, 5 of which are from Aang's era, and 5 of which are from Korra's. Now, like I said, I was sent the starter edition, which is designed to give you everything you need to start playing as soon as possible. And what's so impressive about this game's rulebook is that it not only conveys all the game's mechanics to you in a fairly easy to understand manner, but it does something that is so important that I think a lot of games forget to do when they're feeding you instructions. And that's get you excited to play the game. These books are not only designed to teach you how to play the game, but to excite you creatively, to get your mind racing with possibilities. There were several times where I would get so excited about something the rulebook was telling me that I would throw it down and run to my roommates to explain it to them. And that's because there is so much passion put into every ounce of this game that you can't help but get excited about it. Look, I'll be the first one to admit I had unbelievably low hopes for the officially licensed Avatar role-playing game. I was fully ready for this to be the RPG equivalent of Dragon Ball Z Monopoly. You know, where it's like just some half-assed cash grab that the creators of the series don't even know exist. But it's so clear to me, just by reading through the instructions in the adventure book, that these developers worked closely with the creators of the show to make sure that this is to the standard that fans expect. Let me give you an example. The adventure booklet gives you 2 scenarios to play with. One of the adventures finds your party sent on an infiltration mission by Fire Lord Zuko. After Aang defeated Fire Lord Ozai, a treaty was founded between the Fire Nation and the Earth Kingdoms. The treaty dictates that there will be peace between the countries so long as Zuko agrees to pay war reparations to the Earth Kingdoms. However, a shipment of supplies meant to go to the Earth Kingdom was intercepted by pirates, and if the Earth Kingdom doesn't receive those supplies, they'll think that Zuko has backed out on the treaty and war will break out again. So all you have to do is retrieve some supplies from a bunch of pirates. Sounds easy enough. You wish! You see, during the 100 Years' War, a bunch of Fire Nation naval officers joined together and formed the Crimson Sails, a pirate faction that would often terrorize Fire Nation coasts. Ozai was like, look, you guys can't be doing this stuff, but I also don't have the resources to fight you and the rest of the entire world right now. So, what if I give you supplies and resources, and you give me a break? The Crimson Sails were like, that's dope, and stopped harassing the Fire Nation. When Zuko became the Fire Lord, however, the Crimson Sails were like, hey, we want the same deal your father was giving us. Now at this point, the Crimson Sails are like an entire nation on their own. They have been building their numbers, feeding off the resources Ozai had been giving them, and have become quite the formidable army. But Zuko was like, I'm not gonna pay you to not attack the Fire Nation. What are you, some sort of wet Yakuza? And thus, now we have conflict again. And on top of that, there's a power struggle going on within the Crimson Sails themselves. There's like 5 different pirate captains with their own little unique factions. The point I'm trying to make is that this game is deep. The plot lines are complex, the characters and their motivations are diverse, and it is absolutely daunting while also being incredibly exciting. And it's exciting for a lot of reasons, the first of which being that the world is incredibly accessible. If you want to get into something like D&D, first you've got to read tomes of lore featuring a world you have no prior knowledge or interest in. It's an unbelievably large hurdle to overcome. Not only are most people already familiar with the Avatar world, but even if they aren't, the only homework you have to do to get caught up with this world is watch one of the greatest shows ever put to television. That's a pretty gentle learning curve if you ask me. Now that's not to say that this game makes GMing easy. It doesn't. Nothing will. GMing takes a ton of prep work, and most importantly, a ton of confidence. This game isn't gonna hold your hand through these scenarios, but what it is going to do is give you the confidence to play them out. The second reason this game is so exciting is because it's less about you and your friends collecting loot and going on like an adventure and completing the quest, and more about you guys crafting your own narrative journey and like building the arc of your characters. Most of the game's mechanics revolve around you developing your character's personal arc, building relationships with NPCs and discovering what personal beliefs you want to abide by and honing them. Every player has 2 core beliefs that they have to wrestle with and try and maintain balance between. There's a growth system to simulate each character's emotional growth, with each player having an emotional growth question they have to answer at the end of each session. There are mechanics for consoling allies during times of emotional distress, mechanics based around pressuring others to act in accordance to their ideologies. All of this is to say that the game is less interested in how you completed a scenario and more in how your character developed over the course of it, which I absolutely love. The books give you tips on how to craft gripping narratives also, and it feels like I'm learning more about like screenplay writing or how to tell a story than I am how to play a game. There's a whole section in the rulebook called Crafting Tension, which teaches you that it's not enough to just have your players fighting random goons. That's not what makes an engaging encounter. Stakes do, set pieces do, and it's just like the book gives you a lot of surprisingly cool tips on how to write stories. Now you might have noticed that I haven't talked a lot or really at all about bending, and that's because the game doesn't have a lot of mechanics specifically built around that. The game's philosophy is that bending is in everything, so every decision you make, every move you commit to, can be enhanced through bending. Rather than having specific bending actions or like rolling for bending, you kind of just add bending to your regular actions. For example, there's a mechanic called Guide and Comfort. If you want to guide and comfort an ally during a distressing time, maybe you'd give them some words of wisdom. Remind them that they did something in the previous encounter that meant something to you. Or maybe you're a firebender who's a little more emotionally closed off and stubborn. You still want to guide and comfort your ally, but speaking your feelings isn't really your character's style. So instead, maybe you light a gentle, calming campfire, letting your actions speak for themselves. Every action you commit can be done with or without bending, which makes bending feel more like an extension of yourself rather than like a cool power you kind of just throw out during a combat section. And there's pros and cons to that. On one hand, I do think that that's pretty cool. It means you aren't limited in your bending. You're as good of a bender as you imagine yourself to be. It makes being a strong bender less about raw power and more about how clever you are and how you utilize your bending abilities. But on the other hand, the side of me that loves video games, that loves unlocking abilities, and loves the martial arts aspect of Avatar, isn't really satiated with the mechanics of this game. Each character gets 2 attack moves that they can eventually learn to master, but there isn't like a list or like a cool deck of different bending abilities you can work towards and unlock. At least not in the starter set. Magpie Games have informed me that there are a lot more mechanics in the core set, and the starter set is more of like a streamlined situation just to get you playing as soon as possible. So I don't know, I can't vouch for the core set. And like I said, it isn't a massive gripe because it does make bending more open to creativity than if there were like hard set things you could do with bending. But it would be cool to have a little booklet or like deck of cards or something with like beginner, intermediate, and advanced bending techniques that you could like hope to aspire towards. But even that is such a small nitpick in an otherwise amazing package. For $25, you are getting 2 scenarios that can last you and your friends hours, 10 character sheets, 10 dice, all of which are of incredible quality. I'm not sure how well it'll translate on camera, but I was blown away by how nice these booklets were. I'm the type of person who wants all of my board games and cards and everything to stay in like impossibly pristine condition. So these like pseudo like plasticky vinyl booklets are an absolute godsend. The character sheets also just feel like great to hold. Nothing feels cheap or flimsy. These all feel like you could toss them around and they would last for years. Which is especially cool because when you look at these character sheets, whenever I'm done with the starter set, like I would hang these. These are so sick. These have such great designs on them and they make such cool like art pieces, in my opinion. I have been assured that none of this is canon, but like I said, there's so much passion, so much attention to detail in all of this that I am fine with anything from the core book or from the adventure book and from these being in my headcanon. Avatar Legends, a role-playing game, offers an experience that fans have been dying for years. A chance to put themselves in the world of Avatar. A chance to see themselves as the bender they've always wanted to become. This is a game that puts character choice, narrative development, and philosophical complexity at the forefront, which is exactly what I would want out of any Avatar game. It's so clear that the developers knew that Avatar is about way more than just lifting rocks with your mind and cool martial arts combat sequences. It's about philosophy, it's about emotional conflict, it's about taking a journey with your friends. This is a great beginner's RPG because not only is it passionately made, but it's made knowing that you are capable of telling great stories. It wants you to tell great stories. It knows how daunting being a GM is, but it trusts you to handle that task. I honestly believe that if you are at all a fan of the Avatar universe, this is worth checking out. And at a $25 price point, this is the perfect gateway to anybody wanting to dip their toes into playing RPGs for the first time. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know in the comments if you're gonna check out this game, if I've at all like enticed you into playing it, and let me know what you guys thought of my first review of anything remotely like this. I hope it was entertaining. I hope it was informative. Thank you so much to Magpie Games for sending me this. It's been a blast. And I am very excited to get my hands on the core set someday. And I will see you guys next time.